Today, I've got a very special treat for you. I am giving you a snippet of a coaching session I had with a woman of faith that are currently in a leadership role and her struggle with confidence. And today's session is particularly or specifically about her struggling to have tough conversations with staff members and how she really struggles she wants to be kind and clear at the same time, but she just really struggles to word it exactly how she needs to word it and to be clear in terms of her expectations to the staff member who needs to improve their behavior or who needs some form of an improvement. We all know those tough conversations. We all know that we have to have them, but we also know that we're scared of how the person's going to react. And we just don't know how to deal with that. We've all got our own insecurities about that. And some people find it really tough to have those tough conversations. So in this session with Kat, I spoke to her about how she can go about having those tough conversations with her employees and with some of her colleagues, as she also works with a lot of them side by side. And I give her a step-by-step guide of how she can do those tough conversations, what she can say, and how she can prepare. Now, this is only a snippet of the coaching session. It's not the full coaching session. And so if you would like to experience a full coaching session, then I would really like to invite you to go to womenoffaithinleadership.com, scroll down, and you'll be able to book your coaching session there. And in this coaching session, number one, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to discuss what's the root cause of your self-doubt and your lack of self-confidence in those specific areas, because that's actually quite important. Once we've worked past that, we move to strategy. Strategy part is some of the things that I'm sharing with you today with this conversation that I had with Kat, with this coaching session that I had with her. And I know that for you, there is strategy and there is something that you can overcome as well. So I am so excited to share this coaching session with you, and I hope that you get a lot of value from it. And again, just go to womenoffaithinleadership.com where you can go and book your own coaching session. Do you wish that you could lead your team in a way that honors and glorifies God? Are you struggling to overcome self-doubt as a leader and have a desire to be more confident in your role? Welcome to the Women of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, and for the last decade, I've experienced my fair share of managing challenging employees and teams in middle management leadership roles. I committed my leadership journey to God, and it changed everything. And I'm ready to share everything I've learned with you. Now, if you're ready to lead your team in a way that honors God, grab that notebook and pen, and don't forget your chai latte, and let's dive in. Tell me a little bit about your self-doubt and your confidence journey, where you're at, and your struggles.
Okay. I probably, I think, I wrote it down in my intake form. I've kind of fallen into every leadership role. I've never sought it out. I've actually been like, thanks. And it's kind of it's been a thing where I've been like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And it's been kind of like, okay, give it a go. But, there's definitely been a bit of imposter syndrome along the way. I think being female is one aspect to it. I think being younger is sometimes bit of a challenge. Some of the people you're working with are very much older than you, so that's probably another aspect. I'm doing the mum juggle, and that's a very hard place to be in. So there's a number of aspects in which I feel not that confident sometimes. I feel probably, you're very much on display all the time. Like I've kind of put that voice to bed. I'm definitely okay with other people thinking, oh, they probably could do a better job than me. That doesn't bother me so much as probably some of the other it's negative self-chat sometimes. And then I find it's better when I commit it back to God and I go, hey, listen, this, and I've been, I've been in situations where I've gone into a meeting going, I have no idea what I'm going to say in this meeting. Like, I had no good news. And sometimes you're like, that can only have been God in that meeting, because that was not like, that was not something I felt confident to do. So I think I felt better every time I've committed it back and thrown it back on God, just use me. But yes, several aspects to why I might feel insecure about it. I work in a very male dominated workplace in the leadership field. The thing that's hardest is probably those staff conversations, those colleague conversations, probably. Clarity around some of that too, like being kind, but being clear. I'm not trying to, I think, yes, I use too many words. You're probably already stenciling that during this phone call.
That's fine.
But I can use like 25 million words to say the thing I'm trying to say. And actually, that's not fair because I feel like that's not being clear.
Yeah, because sometimes when we have that difficult conversation, we waffle. We say all sorts of words because we are stressed. And we are so scared of that person's reaction. We say lots of words because we want to soften the blow.
Correct. Yes. You're like, literally describing what I'm doing. Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. So I understand because I've been through it myself. So, okay. So let's talk about tough conversations. So tell me at the moment, we just, like I gave you just a description, but in your own words, what does tough conversations look like for you at the moment?
They are usually around so they are usually with my team around things that happened that are not that are out with the bounds of what is appropriate. I don't want to be brutal, but I also need it to be quite clear that that's not appropriate. And I will say it, but I feel like I'm taking 150 million words because I'm treading on eggshells, particularly if they're a new staff member and you haven't built that relationship yet with them to be able to go straight into the
Right.
And maybe it's fear. It's fearful. It's fearful. I don't know what I'm scared of. I don't know.
Yeah. You feel like the word that came to mind is like you're going for the jugular, like you're so worried that you're just going to be too forceful with that, especially because they're new and you don't have the relationship yet. So you had a staff member who sent an email to a parent who was kind of not befitting to what your school would usually do.
Yeah. Correct. Good example. Yep, that is a perfect example. My own feelings on it, I was like, I'm going to need to address this with her at some point. I kind of rechanneled it back to the parent who'd sent it and said, listen, particularly with this parent, we've got to be, really sensitive to the way we send it. But I actually should have just been like, at the school, that's not an appropriate way. And I probably dressed it up in something it wasn't. I feel like I'm not being deceitful. I'm just not perhaps spelling it out as clearly as I should be.
Is that clarity and being kind but being clear, which you said?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Both of those. And I don't know what's holding me back in that sometimes. And sometimes that's probably my own personal insecurity and lack of confidence.
Yeah, I think the thing that's important to remember, Kat, is you're a kind person. So we're not trying to take away the kindness. We're not trying to take away your personality or your values or the integrity that you have, because I think that those things are important qualities for a head of school to have and for any leader to have, because, nobody wants to work for a monster or for somebody who's unkind all the time. So take that as positive. I would take that as positives on yourself. You have very good values and you're trying to respect this new employee. So what happened was that you had a meeting with her, you tried to have a conversation, but there was basically a lot of filler words, a lot of waffling, and you felt left as if, she didn't really understand what she did wrong.
Yeah, so I guess I don't necessarily deflect, but I probably go, what angle am I going to take this from? And I talked about that specific parent and about the way we would generally email parents, particularly those parents, like super anxious. Let's reassure them so that they have confidence in us school instead of making it worse. But I probably if my assistant principal went directly to her and said, did Kat have this conversation with you about your inappropriate email? She'd be like, what? Because I probably didn't direct it specifically to that. Well, I did talk about that email, but I didn't probably talk about it like that. And maybe that's not, and I don't know what I'm like, I don't know why I care. I don't know why I'm so fearful about like I don't know what I think
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So yeah, and that's what you're experiencing is not out of the norm. A lot of people have a lot of fears that if I have a difficult conversation with someone, that person's going to blow up, their reaction's going to be bad, or they're going to say something and I'm not going to know how to react back. Or, you know, for myself, something that I struggled with was I struggled to think on my feet. So if you know, like someone says something to me, I don't have a clever retort back to them, or you know, something immediately that's I maybe 5 hours later I was like, oh, I should have said that back to them. That would have been nice,
I can definitely relate to that. Like, why didn't I do it that way?
Yeah. So my suggestion would be for a situation like that. And then, so I'm going to kind of give you what I would have done in that situation or my suggestions. And then what I'm going to do is, now that it didn't go that way, I'm going to give you advice on what you can, how you can now move forward from that. And maybe Okay. So what I would have what I would suggest is in future, if a situation like this comes up again, because it will, is I want you to go and sit down and get all the information. So make sure that you have all the information ready. Speak to the appropriate people that you need to speak to. In this case, it would have been the assistant principal. So in a situation like that, you schedule the meeting with the person who you're meant to schedule it with. But for you, what you need to do is you need to prepare well. So you need to go and write down what you plan on saying to her or to that person, word for word. And yes, it will take time, and you are not necessarily going to say word for word to that person, but you need to know in your head what you are going to say. You can absolutely not wing it. So, you know, quite often we think, okay, when I get into this meeting, I'm going to know what to say. Well, the problem with that is that you are so stressed in that meeting that your reptile brain kicks in, and then that fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, which is a new one. That's exactly. So most of the time we freeze. We don't know what to say. We get this blockage in our mind, and then we waffle because we don't know what to say. Whereas what we're going to do now is, because you had written down word for word what you needed to say to that person, if you do freeze or if you do get to that, you can actually just take a deep breath, have a drink of water, look down at your notes, and then read your notes. Get back on track, because those notes will get you back on track. You can make shorthand notes, but even I find with shorthand notes that my brain it hasn't kicked back into gear yet. And even with a shorthand note, I'm kind of like going across my eyes are going like this across the page. And I don't know what I should do.
Yeah, so, and then you kind of wanting to be actively engaged in the conversation.
Yes. Okay. So, and you are 100% allowed to say to that person, I have got notes. So if I look down at my notes, it's just because I would like to keep us on track. I'd like to make sure that we stay on topic. And this is why I have my notes. If I do look down at my notes, just, please excuse me for that. You can say whatever you want to say there. There's no reason why.
Disclaimer.
There's no reason why. I even have notes. I've got my notebook right here, because we need to be prepared for that conversation mentally. And then physically as well. So if you've prepared for that conversation, you're going to know exactly what you have to say. It will be tough. It will still be tough. It's not going to take the toughness away, but it's going to take the uncertainty of what needs to come out of your mouth. It's going to take that away. You might still struggle with things like a dry mouth, shaky voice, sweaty palms, because again, that's our body's physical reaction to dealing with those things. But if you have your notebook handy of the things that you need to say, you are reducing that stress, at least with that one point, because you've made those notes.
You're taking something out of the mix like that.
Exactly. And if you start to waffle, which is the thing that we sometimes struggle with, you just go back to your notes.
Okay, so you redirect yourself back.
Redirect yourself.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that is Excellent. I mean, you're in the education, you're
I'm in education
originally
as well,
education
yes.
sector, right? Like, why is it so different when it is a colleague to like a parent? Like,
Mm.
I have no issue like going into a really difficult parent conversation. It is a none of it. Like, it's something I go, nah, it's
Mm.
fine. I don't need notes. I don't need to. I don't know why it's so different. Maybe you've got
Mm. Yes.
insight into that.
So I believe the biggest difference between parents and colleagues is
Mhm.
because a colleague you see every single day. You see them
Yeah.
at recess, you see them at lunch, you bump into them in the corridors. If it's a female, you might even bump into them in the bathroom. So you have to
Yeah.
constantly bump into this person and look at them. Whereas with a
Yeah.
parent, you're not going to see that parent that often. You might greet them in the morning, might be awkward, but that's it. Then they go
Yeah.
away and they only come back at the end of the days. Whereas with a colleague, you
Yeah.
have to see them a lot, and you
Yeah.
have to have a relationship with them. And,
Yeah.
especially if you're in that leadership position, you're
Mm.
expected to get along with everyone.
Yeah.
So your fear is the fact that if I have to have this difficult conversation with a colleague, they're not going to like me, and then I'm going to lose my authority over that person. They're also not going to listen to
Mm.
me when I need to give them instruction.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And I guess
But
a cultural aspect too, where you're like, oh, what a
yeah,
so and so? She's always having it, there's that chat. That doesn't bother me quite so much. I've kind of let that.
I had to go.
I've
Yeah.
tried to pass on that a little bit and go, whatever.
Yeah. So, and look, I will now suggest the same thing, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a
Yeah.
parent, you are going to make those notes and prepare well,
Yeah.
because anybody at any point in time can start building up a wall against them, and then they can get defensive.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do, and so the preparation piece is it's much bigger than what we think it should be. But when I started preparing very well for these meetings and
Mhm.
going over every kind of scenario, that's when I started really having success in my meetings. I also
Okay.
had to let a couple of people go. So over my time, I've had to let about six people go. And those are the toughest conversations ever,
Yeah.
because they do get very angry and they do get a lot of defensive. But because I had my notes, I could constantly just look down at my notes, stay on track, because I could feel myself getting tensed up.
Yeah.
And, so yeah. And then play those scenarios out in your head. Say for yourself,
Mhm.
okay, if this person gets defensive and say that, what's my reaction going to be? If this
Okay.
person is calm, okay, then we just move on. Then that's
Yeah.
the next thing.
Yeah,
But
so having kind of avenues of, if the response is positive,
yes,
this, if almost like a flow chart
a
of
flow
this
chart.
is where it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
This is
It
I
doesn't.
love a flow chart. But yes,
Yes, me
what I mean
too.
is to have it really every, trying to almost put yourself in their shoes and how they might possibly react.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, if you're going to probably do that the first 5 or 6 times. And then after that, it's going to get so easy. Then you're going to already have it in your head. Then you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to have to write out those avenues. You'll still have to write down the full
Mm-hmm.
conversation. I'll always suggest that. But that type of flow chart is going to become easier in your head, because you're
Mm-hmm.
already going to know, okay, if they say that, I'm going to say this, because your responses will kind of remain the same. If a
Mm-hmm.
person gets defensive and they want to go off track, your response is going to be, look, I understand that that's an issue for you as well, but that's not the topic that we're talking about today. We do need to stay on topic. I'm not dismissing what you're saying. I'm going to make a note of it and we'll chat about that in a different meeting. But for now, we're talking about this topic. So, for
Okay.
example, just staying on, taking them back, because if people, if you're giving people constructive feedback, which they are taking as negative feedback, they'll often
Mm-hmm.
deflect and bring somebody else into the conversation, or say, well, I'm
Yeah.
not the only one who did this, or, my colleague is
Yeah.
person that happens often, doesn't it? And we
Yes.
all agreed as a year group that this needs to change. Why am I the only one that's being spoken to,
Yeah.
Then, okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention, but let's just keep to the topic at hand. I hope that you enjoyed listening to that coaching call as much as I enjoyed conducting it. It was so much fun to speak to Kat and to just work through some of her insecurities and to help her to build confidence. Because remember, confidence also takes practice. Practice makes perfect. And so I really hope that you were blessed by that coaching session. So if you would like to book your own coaching session, you can go to womanoffaithinleadership.com, and there is a button where you can click book now, and then you can go and book your own coaching session. I look forward to chatting with you on our coaching call and helping and supporting you to overcome self-doubt and to build confidence as a leader. I can't wait. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts? It would mean so much to me to read your feedback. Also, it would really bless me big if you shared this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from hearing today's message. And remember, put on the armor of God daily and walk by faith and not by sight. I'll meet you back on Monday for another episode.